Countdown to Halloween 2023, featuring eerie and uncanny tales of haunts, ghosts, and suspense. October is finally here. Join us all month for special Halloween presentations on Storylink Radio's YouTube channel as we count down to Halloween 2023. Keep a close eye on YouTube alerts or you'll miss one. Celebrate October with us right here and now. Tonight's presentation from Storylink Radio. The Colony. Andrea's mother opened the curtains. "Time to get up, sleepyheads," she announced cheerfully. Blinking her eyes, Andrea flung her hands over her head and happily stretched her long, lean body. The sunlight streaming through the now open sliding glass doors of the motel balcony had the opposite effect on her older sister, Claire. Claire pulled the covers over her head. "Morning, Mom," Andrea said, sliding out of bed and stepping out on the balcony. "Morning, Grouch," she called her sister, still hiding from the day. The family had been vacationing in the Florida Keys for 3 days, and Andrea was still awed by that spectacular view. Their motel was nestled in the inner edge of a beautiful white sand beach. Beyond were the placid azure waters of the Gulf of Mexico. "Your dad and I have already had breakfast, and your brother's already down the beach," her mom told her. Andrea dropped her gaze and immediately spotted Brandon waiting along the shore, snorkeling gear in hand. "He's not going in the water without me," Andrea squealed, racing to get ready. "Come on, Claire," she urged, pulling on her still damp wet swimsuit. "Are you going to sleep all day? Brandon's outside already having fun. Come on, let's go." "Yeah, I'll be down in a few minutes," Claire mumbled. Moments later, Andrea sprinted across the warm sand and charged into the water up to her knees. Seeing her brother farther out with his mask and snorkel on, floating face down on the surface, Andrea watched as he curled down in a shallow dive. Seconds later, he popped up just a few feet away, blowing a stream of water from his snorkel. Then, tugging off his mask, he began sloshing toward her. "Look at this," Brandon said proudly when he reached her. He held up a cone-shaped brown and white shell that was as large as his hand. "Wow, it's beautiful," Andrea declared. "Hey, you guys, what do you got?" Claire asked, joining them in the water. "It's a cool shell," Brandon answered. "It's the only neat one we've found so far." "Well, you're just not looking in the right place," Claire said matter-of-factly. "Oh, really?" Brandon shot back. "And since when did you become the expert on shells?" "Since I talked to that guy up there." She gestured toward a tall man walking up the beach carrying 2 large red plastic buckets. "He had lots of really pretty shells. I asked him where they came from, and he said he collected them along a cove about a half a mile from here, closer to the Atlantic side. It's overgrown and doesn't have a nice beach, so people rarely go over there." "That won't bother me," Andrea responded with a big smile. "Let's go check it out." Claire held up her hand. "Wait a minute. He said something else, too. There's a steep drop-off, and the current can shift sometimes. He warned me not to go there, but if I did, to stay close to shore, and he was serious about it. He said not to go beyond the drop-off for any reason." "Okay," Brandon said, nodding. "No problem," Andrea agreed. "Let's go." It didn't take long for the kids to find the cove the man had told Claire about, even though a stand of scrub pines hid it from the main road and a tangle of vegetation covered the beach almost all the way to the waterline. Only a thin strip of yellow, coarse sand remained uncovered. "I don't like this," she thought, slapping at a mosquito that was making a meal in her blood. "That guy who told you about this place was right, Claire," she said when they reached the beach. "It doesn't look that great." "Not if you want to play volleyball," Brandon said with a chuckle, "but we're here to snorkel." Andrea couldn't shake the edgy feeling that had gripped her. Still, she waded into the clear blue water. It was much deeper than the beach where they usually swam, and it sloped more steeply. Claire eased out beside her, and Andrea noticed that her sister was still wearing the pearl ring that her parents had given her on her last birthday. "Did you mean to wear your good ring into the water?" Andrea asked. "Oh, no," Claire muttered. "I forgot to take it off at the motel." She looked back at the beach. "I don't feel safe leaving it here. I'll just have to wear it." Adjusting her snorkel in her mouth, Andrea stretched out face down on the surface to view the underwater realm. The sand was dotted with patches of coral, each patch alive with colorful fish. Andrea caught a flash of silver out of the corner of her eye. She turned just in time to see a small barracuda, its gaping mouth filled with tiny, sharp teeth. The predatory fish circled them curiously for a moment, then swam gracefully seaward. Andrea watched it until something in the deep water beyond the drop-off drew her attention. What is that? She wondered, peering into the shadowy depths where little sunlight penetrated. It looked like a structure of some kind, almost like a sunken fortress. Whatever it was, it didn't appear to be a natural formation, and something about it seemed sinister. Andrea wanted to get a better look. Kicking a little closer, she took a deep breath and dove down a few feet. She kicked again, propelling herself even deeper and closer to the edge. Then, to her astonishment, she was just able to make out an ancient-looking door at the base of the structure, and the door was open. Andrea gasped and her mouth filled with seawater. Fighting the reflex to swallow, she rocketed upward back into the bright sunlight. Coughing and sputtering, she tugged off her mask. You okay? Brandon called out to her. I swallowed some water. Let's go in, Andrea choked out, heading for shore. Did you see that thing in the deep water? She asked as the others all flopped down in the sand. You mean that weird stone thing? Brandon responded. Yeah, I don't know why, but it kind of gave me the creeps. Me too, Andrea admitted. I thought I saw. Did you guys see part of it open? Ha! I think you've been holding your breath too long, Claire said, laughing. Andrea scowled. Lots of spooky things happen around here, she declared defensively. I've read stories about people and ships disappearing without a trace in a part of the Atlantic Ocean called the Bermuda Triangle, and that's not far from here, you know. Even a whole island disappeared. Maybe that structure was part of it. You're mixing up different legends, Claire said with a wave of her hand. The island you're talking about is Atlantis, which is just a myth, and most of the disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle can be explained anyway. There's always a logical answer if you look for it instead of believing in silly stories. Okay, Miss Know-It-All, Andrea demanded angrily. Then what is that thing down there? Claire shook her head, still smiling. I don't know. But if it was anything important, don't you think other people would have explored it by now, or at least reported it? Maybe they tried, Brandon replied ominously, and maybe something stopped them. Oh, well, Claire said, standing. I really don't care what it is or why it... Oh, no, she held up her hand. My ring! It's gone! She glanced out toward the water and back to her brother and sister. I've got to go look for it. You're crazy, Brandon protested. There's no way you can find a little ring out there. Come on, let's go. I remember where I was swimming the last time I saw it. I can find it if you guys help me. Let's go. The thought of it going back into the water scared Andrea, but Claire had already made her feel foolish about her fear. Okay, she agreed reluctantly, but let's hurry. With Claire in the lead, the three carefully retraced her path. They had almost given up the search when Brandon suddenly signaled and pointed to something caught in a piece of coral at the edge of the drop-off. It was the ring. Andrea watched Claire dive toward it, but just as her sister reached out to grab the ring, Andrea felt herself heading downward, too, against her will. The current had suddenly begun shifting strongly seaward, and even though she kicked as hard as she could, Andrea swept helplessly toward the drop-off. She lost sight of Brandon altogether, but she saw Claire grabbing at the coral in panic as the unnatural current caught her in its grip as well, was dragging them over the edge and into the depths, right toward that unearthly structure. The end. Why do you keep doing that? That's not the end. Oh, sorry. Her body screaming for a fresh breath, Andrea felt consciousness slipping away. She barely noticed as an opening suddenly appeared at the base. Then in a flash, she and her sister and brother were sucked through the gaping maw. Regaining her senses, Andrea found herself on the stone floor of a gloomy, air-filled chamber with corridors leading off in several directions. Small crystals embedded in the stone walls appeared to be giving off a faint glow. Claire, she cried out. Brandon! Shh! Her sister hushed her. We're right here, but you've got to be quiet. There's a tremor in her voice. I don't think we're alone. Andrea fell silent and listened to the sound of water falling drop by drop from the roof of the chamber. And yes, there was a shuffling noise as if something had just moved quickly across the floor of the corridor. What are we going to do? She whispered, pressing closer to her brother, struggling to hold back her tears. We've got to find a way to the surface, he answered, trying to sound brave. One of these corridors may lead upward. But even if it does, Andrea moaned, it might take us farther out to sea. We have to take that chance, Claire insisted. Slowly the three entered the nearest corridor. Andrea's eyes had adjusted to the gloom enough so that she could make out some mystical carvings on the walls. Whatever they were in, it was clearly no natural formation. But who had built it, and where were they now? Claire stopped and turned, peering into the shadows behind her. I can't shake the feeling we're being followed, she murmured under her breath. Andrea felt it too. It's waiting, she thought in horror. The corridor took a turn and ended abruptly. There were entrances to two others, one leading left, the other to the right. Let's try this way, Brandon urged, nudging Andrea and Claire to the left. The other one's going down. Within a few yards, the corridor opened onto a small alcove. Brandon held up his hand for his sister to wait, and he stepped cautiously inside. There's no way out through here, he called back softly. There's just piles of stuff. They look like big round shells or something. I can't make out what... Just then, Brandon's foot kicked an object at the bottom of one of the piles. Andrea watched as something pale and fairly round rolled toward her feet. She bent down to pick it up and looked into two empty eyes and a fleshless grin. With a blood-curdling scream, she dropped it. It's a skull! Ah, it's a human skull! The unstable pile suddenly gave way, and dozens of skulls tumbled across the stone floor. Let's get out of here, Claire yelled as they dashed back along the corridor that headed down deeper into the seabed. Gasping for breath, they finally stumbled into a huge open chamber and stopped abruptly as if they had been glued to the spot. Dozens and dozens of dark-cloaked figures stood waiting in the shadows all around them. Brandon was the first to find his voice. Who are you? What do you want from us? One figure stepped into the dim glow of a crystal and lowered the hood of its cloak. Andrea felt her heart pumping furiously. The being was ghostly pale and slender, with cruel blood-red eyes and only one hand. It opened its mouth to speak and exposed a pair of sharp, gruesome fangs. My child, we want your blood, of course. Vampires! Claire whispered in fright. But this isn't possible. You don't exist. Oh, I assure you we do, the creature said and laughed evilly. And we have prospered far better than our land-dwelling brethren since we left the surface centuries ago to establish this colony. Here we are safe from those who would hunt us and from the wretched effects of your miserable sun. Licking its lips, the hideous vampire moved closer. Andrea glanced back down the corridor, hoping to find an avenue of escape, but saw three shadowy beings barring the way. And we have had no shortage of prey. We feed on those who are careless enough to stray too close to our realm. I imagine the disappearances have caused some alarms, but humans will always seek logical answers, just as they would explain away your disappearance. My unfortunate ones. And with that, the grotesque creatures threw back their hoods and, snarling, slowly advanced towards Andrea, Claire, and Brandon. Andrea wanted to run, to scream, but all she could do was gaze at the horrible face that bore down upon her, drowning in the depths of its blood-red eyes. You've just heard tonight's story from Storylink Radio's Countdown to Halloween 2023. Remember to come back for our next tale. Many more stories of all genres available to listen to and read along with now on our website at www.storylinkradio.com. Visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/storylinkradio. And visit our podcast for easy mobile listening anywhere, anytime. Just search for Storylink Radio on your favorite podcast provider. Oh, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click that alert bell for Storylink Radio.